So we're in webinar number 4. This is our 4th in a series. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring topics that really help just change the way people do business, right? We're trying to instill a level of confidence, but we're also trying to help people think just differently about sales, about marketing, about innovation, about ideation. And today the topic is all around selling with confidence. And this topic originally was inspired because there's a few things that are at play here. One, I'm an agency owner. So everything that I do comes down to a sale. Think about the pre-sale, getting new clients in. The lifeblood of any agency is new business. The second thing is because what we're selling is brains and bodies, we're selling ideas and people, a service. Everything that we sell has to be articulated in a way that is extremely clear, viable, and adding value. And so we get into this mentality of what have you done for me lately constantly. And so if we're selling from a place of lack or desperation, it's never going to go well. And so what I found is that we have to shift from what we'll call insecurity to security, and that comes with confidence. And the other big motivation here is I've been getting probably 20 to 25 emails per day from insert business development rep, insert technology, insert benefit. And these notes are quote unquote personalized to me, AKA they used AI to scrub our site or scrub somewhere in my LinkedIn profile. And I'm getting so many of these requests, and they're all selling from a place of features and benefits. It's not coming from a place of value. It's not coming from a place of strong foundation. And it doesn't inspire me to respond. Then I immediately hit the trash button and get rid of it. And so what I wanted to do is give some frameworks about how we're selling with confidence as an agency. In addition to that, though, bring in a wonderful guest of Ross McKenzie, who I'll introduce in a second, because he's codified a framework called the outcome of the outcome. So you'll see S's there on outcomes of outcomes. Doesn't really matter. The idea is getting into the outcome today. And once that's achieved, what becomes possible in the future. So it's a completely change of framework in terms of how we sell. So the agenda for today, first we're going to do is we're going to give a quick definition of what sales is and what sales is not. Oftentimes when you think about sales, there is a lot of negative connotation paired with sales. I don't know if that's from a place of envy or jealousy or just because it's an easy target, but you've heard things like snake oil salesman, you've heard used car salesman. The reality is everything is a sale to some degree, right? Whether you're at the checkout and you're getting a candy bar, or you're discussing buying a new car or a new technology, everything is a sale. Even if you're a designer and you're designing something new, you have to roll that out and describe and stand by your designs. And that creates a narrative where people can buy into. Second thing we'll do is we'll introduce what is the outcome of the outcome. It's 4 words strung together. What's the meaning behind it? Why should it matter? Why should you care? Next thing is we'll describe selling with confidence. How do we infuse confidence into your process? And ultimately kind of change and reframe the way you think about joining virtual meetings, in-person meetings, board presentations, whatever it is. Next thing we'll do is Ross and I will take you through a role play. The goal is Ross and I will interact with each other. We'll show you in live presence, not scripted, so completely open, a standard sales conversation that we often see, selling on features and benefits. And then we will see a future conversation around the outcome of the outcome. And so we'll change the way we kind of format and flex with the way we're describing things. And then following that is we'll take you through 4 key actions that we believe are practical, pragmatic, thoughtful. And then these are things that whether you use one or use all 4, they will immediately start adding value today. So one thing that really is a bugaboo for me is when you join a webinar and you're getting pitched something and you don't get anything pragmatic to use. That is definitely not going to happen today. So our goal is you get 40 minutes, key practical applications. And then the last bit is questions and answers. We will leave enough time. Maybe something we say sparks some energy or some thought in you. Whatever the questions are, whether broad or specific, you go ahead and fire away. And so real quick, Ross McKenzie, who is the guest of honor today? Ross is a sales leader and performance coach. Ross is our head of business development, so he helps us in the wild selling and describing our services. 3 decades of experience. He's been a beast in the boardroom. There's probably not a deal he has not negotiated. He's worked for large-scale giants like Hewlett-Packard, as well as EMC Dell. When we're talking about what Ross was selling, he was transforming global businesses with ideas, with applications. And these are not things that you can sell on price. You have to sell on value. And so in addition to that, Ross has also codified and rolled out the Value Mentor program. So this is a way to get individuals. Think of people like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Lamar Jackson, these really high, powerful athletes. the craze of Caitlin Clark. All of these individuals now are in the top 1%. And so Ross is specifically helping individuals rise out of the 99% and be part of that 1%. And he's doing that through unlocking units of performance. So Ross, super pumped to have you here today. You are always impressive.
Oh, thank you, Brian. That was lovely.
You
I'm
deserve it.
blushing.
And then myself. So if for those that don't know me and they're new to this presentation, I'm the founder and principal of EverWonder, full-scale creative agency. We specialize in helping make people money with endless imagination. So everything we do, the goal is how do we add enough value to make brands, businesses, organizations, individuals money? That's the reality. And so my history goes back. I'm very left brain, right brain thinker, started a career in finance, moved into marketing. And now as an owner, there's not really many areas of the business that I don't touch. But my goal is how do I continue to inspire clients to live in this idea of what's possible? So how do I get their imaginations flexing in a way to really bring in new thinking? So Ross, thanks for being here. All right, now that we got through the preamble, what the heck is sales anyway? How is it defined? How are people talking about it? What is it not? And I think what I like to think about here is that sales is not the conventional thing that individuals think about when they say, okay, I'm going to sell you something. You are going to buy something. People have heard like the Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, sell me this pen. Even that dynamic sends the wrong message, this wrong chilling message around what sales is. Because our goal is to take you from transactional commodity selling to value-based selling and to think about outcomes. How do we then create an emotional connection with individuals in a way that gets them out of their daily routines, right? Most people default to wanting to say no, not yes. And so if you've heard anything about neuro-linguistic programming or anything about language patterns, if you can get someone to say yes to two very simple things, the third yes is significantly more easy. So that's not really what we're really going to talk about, because that I think is tough to create formulas. Our goal here today is to take you through this notion of the Webster definition of sales. It's a noun. And what it really comes down to is the exchange of a commodity for money, the action of selling something. And again, I mentioned things like candy bar at checkout, cars, et cetera. In our context, if the majority of the folks on here are talking about business, you could think about sales as the team that has quotas. They have compensation plans that are dictated to closing new business. Terms like, I need new logos, I need new leads, these leads suck, marketing is not giving me what I want. That is really what sales has become. Sales has become this thing of, we know we need it, but we don't necessarily know how to frame it. And I don't know why there's this negative connotation with sales, but what we're here to talk about today is, this is a definition that I think is useless because it's not how we think about it. So Ross, if you want to kick off what we believe sales actually is, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thank you. It's always good to see a good old dictionary definition of something, because that's the accepted usage. And if what we're doing is we're exchanging a commodity for money, well, apparently we're selling, but I would argue that we're vending. We're not selling at all. We're a vendor. You know, in the modern world, if that's what you're doing, it's going to be hard to earn a living, because we're not selling commodities. We're selling unrealized or unperceived value. We're selling all sorts of other things, but we're not selling commodities. And if what we do is not, if we fall into the vendor trap, there's two issues with the vendor trap. The first is, if you're selling on price and features and benefits all the time, then basically your product is interchangeable with anything else that does something approximating the same thing. And so if somebody drops the price by 10%, there's a good chance that your forecast is going to take a pretty big hit. But there's a bigger and more disturbing implication of the vending side of things, because you also become a commodity. So you and your business are interchangeable with anybody else's business if they offer a similar product at a similar price point. It's a really frustrating way to sell. I was there for a long time. It nearly killed me. I hated it. I wanted to get out of the business. I just couldn't live with it. And eventually you sort of find a way, but it took me a long time. Now, we need to kind of go back a little bit about selling, because everything is a sale. Business is sales. Without sales, there is no business. And selling has never been about products or services or things, really. It's about the experience that people have once they've bought those things. Now, we'll come on to some examples about this later on, but if you can give them an experience during their conversation with you that sets them tingling about the future and uncovering possibilities that perhaps they hadn't even thought of, or they'd never been brave enough to verbalize to themselves, you've got an interest going on in there, and they're now starting to justify that to themselves in terms of value, the value to them. Now, the other thing to remember about us as salespeople is we are our product or service's voice. And if we don't know how to speak properly for it or have a conversation on its behalf, then it might as well not exist. And that would be a real shame. So that's how I view sales right now, Brian.
Listen, it's spot on. And I think when we go from sales to now introducing outcome, the reason why is because it is tough to be on the sales grind. It is. I mentioned quotas. When you're given a number and you're given a quota to connect to a monthly, quarterly, or annual number, that adds pressure. And if you are a commission-based salesperson, that means there is pressure connected to every single conversation you have. It is a natural progression to sell as a vendor or a commodity because you feel some level of desperation. And that gets into what we'll talk about shortly, which is around confidence, right? It becomes easy to become insecure when you are hearing no far more than you're hearing yes. It's easy to become insecure when you're getting ghosted. These are things that when they happen in our dating life, it's devastating. If you're talking to someone and you believe that there's interest there and you get ghosted by that individual with no reason why, and all of a sudden you put all this effort into it and then it disappears, that is a very difficult thing to cope with. However, it's a learning experience, and it's the same learning experience with sales, because what we're talking about is moving from vendor to value-based decision maker or problem solver. If you talk to a good recruiter or placement consultant, or you talk to individuals that really see success in software sales, they're not always selling their product. The majority of time when they're having conversations, what they're doing is they're actually having value-based conversations to understand and pull things out of individuals that, frankly, people will tell you about, right? A great example, I was at the gym a few days ago, and one of my buddies is a recruiter, and he came up to me and he said, Brian, I have a formula that always works. When someone reaches out to me and I have an inbound lead and someone says that they want a new job or that they're just looking for the market, my formula is I ask them and I say, oh, tell me about your experience that you're having with work now. And I have them send me their resume and I go through the resume and I basically celebrate their role for them. And I talk about like, well, why would you ever want to leave? Like, it looks like you have a great role. You're well taken care of. These are all great things. And that's when individuals typically go, well, and then they start to share one signal of why they're not happy, because the reality is they're calling a recruiter based on a point of curiosity, but you don't know what that point of curiosity is. That's an opportunity to get to an outcome and to understand future outcomes, right? What is it that they're actually looking for? Not that you're trying to sell them a service right off the bat. And so we believe sales is much more about a meeting of individuals in business, whether virtually, in person, it doesn't really make a difference. It's a conversation for a problem to be solved. And so where outcome of the outcome comes in is that if you go into a conversation and you truly try to meet someone where they stand and understand where they're coming from, it doesn't really matter if it's an inbound lead, an outbound lead. If you are interested in following someone on LinkedIn because you believe you can get an inroad at a large scale product company, or you want to work with SpaceX or Microsoft or whatever your dream company is, if you find someone that fits your role and your ideal customer profile and you reach out to them and just want to connect, there's nothing really that you can say to inspire them unless you start to understand and meet them where they are. And that starts with following them on LinkedIn, engaging with their content, commenting, beginning to add value and add certain ways that you're solving problems without even them knowing that you're solving challenges, because you're now becoming indispensable. So let's introduce this concept. I mentioned it's a 4 kind of word phrase, the outcome of the outcome. Well, it's 5 actually. That's hilarious. But the first thing is we're shifting from this idea of features and benefits to really getting into this dance with a client of what becomes possible, present and available once an outcome has been achieved. So we hear legitimately almost every day, we hear, I need more leads. Our clients will say that to us. And that is understandable because the lifeblood of any company is new business. It's sales. How do I continue to bring cash flow in? How do I make more money to be more successful? That outcome is interesting because when more leads come in, then what? Once we're in a situation where we have more leads in hand and you have more logos than you know what to do with, I guess that's a good problem to have, but is it? Are we able to deliver against that? Do they know where that money is going to go once they have more cash flow? So the outcome of the outcome is with more leads, then what becomes possible? You now can invest in greater talent. Okay, once you have greater talent, then what becomes possible? Your team is shaped to do what? And if you can help someone play in that and take them from a place of kind of discomfort and no into possibilities and yes, that's where we start seeing the magic. That's when you'll have some pixie dust in a meeting. The second thing is from an outcome of the outcome perspective, if you can create an emotional engagement and future state for a client, that's when the conversation will change. Now, you might be thinking to yourself as you hear this, well, Brian, you have the gift of gab. Words come easy to you. You tell stories. It's easy for you. I don't have all those gifts. How can I do that? The reality is you play into your strengths. If you're an introvert and you're quiet and you're a person of few words, this actually helps you. This serves your advantage because you are there to listen, not to talk. And great sales conversations will go with asking a question in an emotional state is, hey, well, what's keeping you up at night? Have you had a night recently where, you shot up in bed and you just couldn't sleep well? What's swirling around in your mind? Now, that person might share with you that has nothing to do with business. It might be something personal. Okay. If that person forms a personal connection with you and shares what's keeping them up at night for whatever reason, right? Let's say that they mention that they have a 2-year-old child and the child's crying and going through the terrible twos. That's a great thing because what you can say is you understand now if they're not getting great sleep, they're crabby and irritable potentially. Now you could connect back to how do I save this person time and let them work less? That becomes an outcome. Okay. And the last one is inspiring new thinking. I've seen great success with just being able to change the way individuals talk about things simply because people get on a routine and they get on their experience set and they're going to talk about what they're comfortable with. I'll give you an example. Most of the inquiries that we get as inbound leads, people will point to the things that they know. Google paid search ads, programmatic display ads. They'll talk about brand campaigns. They'll talk about logo redesigns or brand refreshes, all these things as an agency. And what I often hear in that is, how do I now break the pedagogy that's their mind? And how do I inspire new thinking back to them to freeze them and go, what's the last good programmatic display ad you've seen? That will freeze someone in their tracks because they'll go, oh shit, well, that's a good question. And they might not have an answer. And that's where you now can start getting into new thinking because they might think they need something. And through conversation and dialogue, through the outcome of the outcome, you might get to a newly different set of territory. So Ross, I know you wanted to share something on the concept of outcome, how you codified it and where this came to be, how you live by it. So can you jump into that?
I'd have to charge you an awful lot of money to explain all that to you, Brian.
Value-based.
Absolutely. So, no, let's just go back a little bit. So we've established that most businesses sell on features and benefits, and for a while that can work pretty well for you. So if you have this extra special, mega groovy feature that sets you apart from the competition, then you'll probably enjoy a period where you have a competitive advantage and you can take a bundle of money and have a bit of fun. But as soon as somebody else comes up with their own version of this extra groovy, super duper attribute, then you may well find yourself back at stage one. Now, I'm going to sort of jump off piste here a little bit and simplify things greatly by taking you and I into an old-fashioned shop that used to reside in streets up and down United States and Britain. They were called travel agents. But we can still visit a travel agent online. But let's say you and I have decided that we want to go on holiday together and we're going to go and have a bundle of laughs on activities holiday somewhere near the sea, but also close to the mountains and with lots of crazy, dangerous activities. So we truck up to the travel agent and they say, what are you looking for? So we give them the brief and they go, well, we got this, we got this, we got this, and we've got this. And we have a little natter amongst ourselves. And then we start having the conversation. Okay, what's important to us? Brian wants to do these things. Ross wants to do these things. Why does Brian want to do these things? Well, Brian is a very sociable, gregarious person. He'll want to go out in the evening and meet new people and forge new friendships and relationships and alliances. You love to explore the area. You're interested in the history. You're interested in the culture. You're interested in the language. And meanwhile, I'm going, I just want to hang from a parachute. So I start thinking, what is it going to be like hanging from this parachute and parapenting and, hang gliding and abseiling and doing all this good stuff. And so we start getting a bit excited about how this holiday is coming together. And eventually we go, right, let's get the credit cards out. So we buy this holiday and they give us a receipt. That's the outcome. That's the outcome of the transaction. We get a piece of paper. We get a piece of paper and some vouchers, and the vouchers allow us to turn up at the airport with our bags, check in, jump on an airplane, get on a bus at the other end, check into a box of rooms, thousands of other people, and then be released in this area. That's what we've bought. But that's not what we think we've bought. We've sold ourselves an experience that hasn't happened yet. I'm going to be up in the air dangling from string, and you're going to be meeting loads and loads of interesting people and having a great time out there. But we've created a future that it doesn't exist yet. It can't exist until the previous outcome is complete. So that's what we're buying. We're buying an experience that hasn't been created yet, and only becomes possible when that first outcome has been achieved. And selling is exactly the same thing. So bring it back into the technical again. If I have a product that reduces a company's downtime by 10%, and then they buy it and they reduce their downtime by 10%, I'm going to go, yahoo, that was a great sale. I have achieved the outcome. And I might go away and think, oh, I'm just waiting for the next upgrade. But what I haven't done is I haven't explored what it is that they might have wanted to do with that 10% reduction, what now becomes possible for them. So if I'd had the conversation, they might have shared with me, well, if we reduce our downtime by 10%, we get access to all sorts of government contracts that we can't get access to because we're not certified at that level yet. And that represents probably 100% increase in our turnover within 24 months. Is that worth knowing? So, okay, you increase your turnover by 100% within 24 months. What are you going to do with that? Well, we will invest in people, we'll invest in new markets, we'll pay dividends to the shareholders. The CEO wins CEO of the year, we win team of the year. I get a promotion. There are all sorts of potential outcomes of this 10% reduction. Those are the ones that we want to be talking about. What'll it be like when you get a 25% pay increase and a promotion based upon the success of this project? Just what would that be like? And even if they don't tell you, they're thinking about it. Okay, so you're creating outcomes of outcomes. So it was never about the 10% reduction. It was about all these other things that we haven't even talked about yet. So that's where we want to get to with these conversations.
And it takes you to an emotional place. So you're going to have a very different experience on your vacation than someone else. Or if you're having someone talk about 10% downtime, you're now asking, and to your point, they might not tell you, but they're thinking about it. So you're getting them to a place of new thinking where now they're not in a sales conversation. They don't feel like they're being berated or sold to. Now they feel like they're inventing, they're ideating. And so that's a good transition to the next bit, which is how do we sell with confidence? Now, if I just find, there we go. Here's our Zoom. I wanted your face to be bigger, Ross. Sorry. I wanted you to talk to then capture the crap. Okay, so we're back. So what is holding back from selling with confidence? This is something I'm pretty passionate about because when I mentioned lack or insecurity, insecurity is not just an internal clock, right? These come from things that are connected thoughts and feelings. And so what I believe is happening that gets in the way is these inner workings of limiting beliefs. So if you believe things like, well, I can't sell to them, they're a multinational company, or, oh my goodness, like I'm not equipped to sell to a chief executive officer. That's a limiting belief. If you believe that to be true, you're sending a signal to the universe, whether you believe in the universe or cosmic connections or not, you're wearing your heart in your sleeve, and that is going to become evident. And so if you're nervous before a meeting, I would sooner rather have that conversation with the customer you're talking to than to try to hide it and suppress it, because now you're moving away from transparency. Misconceptions are another bit. Can't judge a book by its cover, right? If you try to form connections and try to form assumptions based on what someone's wearing or what someone's role is or where they've come from, that leads to unvalidated assumptions. And unvalidated assumptions are very dangerous, right? If you've ever been in a conversation with someone and it's a conflictive conversation or you're handling a confrontation and they continue to tell you how you feel, or they say things like, I know, it's very difficult. Those are phrases that you really should stay away from. because confidence comes from this ability to ask a question and just wait. Silences could be a good thing, right? Give someone a chance to think. What I've observed in sales conversations that go sideways are when you're asking a question and there's an uncomfortable silence, which could be 20 seconds, and you jump in to try to ask another question or to interrupt or to interject because you feel that the quietness is uncomfortable. What that does is it creates thoughts and feelings with the other individual that their power is being stripped from them. And so the way we shift from insecurity to confidence is we start having conversations to build rapport by validating assumptions. Hey, from what I've seen in data, insurance companies have very long cycle times. It's very hard for insurance companies from the numbers to close claims quickly. Is that something you experience? That's a very fair question because you're now taking a data point that you've done your research and you're asking. They might come back and go, well, no, Brian, actually, that's not our problem. Our problem is this. And so when you factor these things in, I understand and I empathize that it is hard to let go of limiting beliefs because our mind is naturally programmed to think. And oftentimes our mind is there to protect us. So these thoughts that come up might be there to protect us, but they might be based on conditioning of the past. And that record of the past might not be good. You might have had a very difficult meeting with a CEO at one point. You got to let that go. And you got to let that go because when you sell to your strengths and you can validate assumptions, the conversation will change. And that's what outcome of outcomes helps. So that being said, what you see on your screen here is a small visual display of a brand called One Click Code. So we're going to take you through 2 different scenario role plays. Ross is going to play the role of insurance executive for a large-scale insurance carrier in the United States. For those in Europe, if you have different business models, try to think of this like a technology product being sold to a large, an executive who has decision-making power. And you'll see accurate codes, accurate claims. So what is One Click Code? One Click Code is a native application and web application that helps insurance companies identify building codes and the nuances of building codes, and also weather patterns that help you understand how to build an estimate for replacing and repairing a roof. So one stat that I thought was pretty interesting is that 90% of all exterior insurance claims, so we've just had Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene, these are devastating hurricanes. When they hit and ravage an area, 90% of those claims will have a roof component as part of that, which means that it's a big amount of money, right? So when you think of the roofing market, it's massive. One Click was built directly to serve that market. The challenge, though, is that their product is first of its kind. Their product is that it's new behavior, and they're selling into a really saturated market. But they're also selling to insurance executives a very different value proposition than they're selling to roofers. Different audience, different requirement set. They deal in business completely different. And so the role play is going to show how typical sales conversations go versus not. And we're going to limit them to 2 minutes each because we don't have much time. We could spend a whole hour on a role play. But the other thing I want everyone to know is that we are also setting some parameters. Ross is a warm lead. I would even say kind of a hot lead at this point, in the sense where Ross has read some sales materials. He's been given a demo to some degree. And now we're in a part of the conversation where it's going to be a buying decision. Okay, so let's get into this. So I'll be Brian, Ross will be Ross.
Hello, Ross McKenzie speaking.
Ross, how are you? Brian Senna from One Click Code. How's things going?
Oh, hi, Brian. I'm good. What about you, Guy? You okay?
Not too bad. Have you had a chance to go through the demo? Have you had a chance to go through the slides that were sent?
Yes, I have. Thank you. I found it a little bit perplexing. I wasn't sure what it was that you wanted me to focus on. There was a lot there.
I know. Well, we send a lot because we think what we do is tremendously valuable. That being said, though, let me see if I can cut through some of the noise. So we are a product that we're trying to push new behavior in the market. We are first of its kind. So when you think about this technology, no other insurance company is able to actually access this. So what we do is we jump into 30,000 different municipalities. We scrub those municipalities. We get access to building codes. Those building codes allow us to build like a really nice snapshot report that your insurance adjusters can identify that building report, add it to an insurance claim, and they could save themselves a ton of time.
Okay. See, Brian, one of my issues here is that, as you know, I'm not a technical guy, but we have masses of tech around this place. Everyone seems to have a tool or an app or something or other that tells me that they can do all this stuff. And I don't know whether it works or not. So what makes yours any different than, why would I spend any time evaluating this when I think I've already got it all.
Right. And it's a common thing we see with insurance companies, saturated tech, lots of options. I think in this case, for one, we could put it right into the insurance adjuster's hands. So you guys can demo the product. You can go on a free trial. You don't have to have the large scale onboarding that other insurance companies typically face. Reason being is because we want you guys to try the product and get value. Second thing is, other insurance carriers that are using us in the top 50, we're watching them save 20, 30% in value or savings rather in the claims that they're processing for roofs. So it's a pretty impactful thing. It's hard to say no to because you can go ahead and just demo the product.
Okay. All right. Who else are you working with, Brian? I mean, see, one of the things we can't afford to do is well, I mean, with respect, you are a little company, you're a new company. What sort of relationships do you have with any other businesses? Do you tie in with anything else? Or if let's say we went down your route and you went pop, what happens to us?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've gotten to the point now where we just landed our Series A round of funding. So our value of the company has just went up 30x. We have been invested in by one of the top leading insurance carriers, one of the top 10. So they process the largest claims in the US. And we're also working
who's
with,
that, Brian?
so that's State Farm. So like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you.
And so what do you think? Is this something that you guys would be interested in potentially getting in the hands of some of your adjusters?
Yeah, it could be, Brian. It could be. I think that on the basis of this conversation, I need to go away and review what you sent me again, and then I'll get back to you, and we'll maybe set up a demo, and again, I'll get one of my adjusters involved in that. How would that be?
I really appreciate that. We'll talk very soon.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
And call ended. So for those that are on the webinar, hopefully dialed in and listening, I'd be curious to think what you heard in that conversation. Because again, this was unscripted. This is Ross playing the role of an executive. This is me trying to sell one-click code. You'll notice that my first default mechanism was I'm going to sell on features. 30,000 municipalities, one streamlined building code report, 90% of claims have a roofing component. We can save you time. We can do things faster. But what did you notice about Ross? What did you notice about Ross's reactions? And Ross, what did you notice? What were you feeling when you were going through that?
Well, what I wasn't trying to do, Brian, for everybody else's benefit, is I wasn't trying to make this either easy or unnatural. I actually put my executive hat on, knowing that I've got a call with somebody I probably don't really want to speak to, but I will be polite and I will listen to the very best of my ability. But I've got other things on my mind, and you came across to me as an enthusiastic and pretty well-informed salesperson selling me features and benefits. I didn't remember much about the demo that I looked at. And when you talked about the savings, the 20%, my ears pricked up. I thought we could have gone there a little bit more. And so the reason I exited the call with saying that I would have a look at it again was because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot by not doing anything here, but it wasn't compelling enough for me to be curious to take action, because I might get back to you and I might not.
And you likely won't. So my opinion on this is, if the call was handled this way with an insurance executive, when you're getting airtime with someone whose time is very valuable and you're selling on features and benefits, you're not giving them a chance, one, to inspire new thinking. You're not forming an emotional connection, and you're not looking at the outcome. So what does that 25% savings get? Doesn't really give them the ability to take that up to the boardroom and go up the chain and say, listen, this is something we need. So now we're going to flip the script. We'll go second role play, same assumptions, but now.
Okay, but before we get going, I think the only thing that's going to be the same as the last time is you're going to go ring, ring, and I'm going to go, hello, Ross McKenzie speaking. We'll have that 10-second with a preamble. Then I'm going to react entirely to what it is you're doing. I'm not going to bring that past call into this one.
Amazing. So fresh start. Okay.
Yay. Hello, Ross McKenzie here. Good morning and welcome.
Ross, how are you, buddy? Brian sent over at One Click Code. How's things going?
Oh, hi, Brian. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited. We have some new things cooking up in the roadmap that I think are going to change the game for insurance. So I'm pretty excited.
Okay, well, let's get on with it. I'm pretty pressed for time, Brian. What can I do for you?
I know you're pressed for time. You have you have a lot on your schedule because you're a fantastic person. Because from our last conversation, I could feel that. So my question, I know that you're pressed for time, but did you have a chance to look through the materials that I sent, the one sheeter, the slides, and the demo of the product? Did you have a chance to go through that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did, Brian. Thank you for sending it through. It was I get a lot of this stuff. So if I confuse it with anybody else's stuff, I apologize, but it did look to be quite interesting. It led me to question, what differentiates it from all the other stuff that we have that people tell me does the same kind of thing. Like we may have 10 or 15 apps, but they kind of do what this thing that you've got does. Why, why would it be of interest to us?
Right. So differentiation was a challenge. Now, when you're looking through materials like that, I get the impression that they could be overwhelming. Is there is there anything that you've experienced in the past that have differentiated themselves? Like what would you be looking for in that swarm of confusion? What would have gotten you excited?
Brian, I'm a data guy, you know that. And what I need precision, accuracy, and consistency of data. That's how our business works. And estimates are estimates, but by heck, they can vary hugely, as you know. And what's key for us is consistent, accurate, precise, reliable information that allows us to get our job done faster because it takes too long now. It's a nightmare.
Right. And it takes too long in terms of getting precise and accurate numbers, or you're saying it takes too long just to be able to achieve that standard?
Ah, all of it. If I just quickly walk you through the process, I mean, a claim comes in, we have to work our magic, or some people would say black magic on it, and test it and make sure that it's accurate and make sure that there's no fraud going on. And eventually, a contractor will get paid. And the contractors think, oh, we're an insurance company. We're just holding onto their money and ripping them off because we never want to pay. And that's not what we're about at all. We want to get this stuff done and paid, but we have to make sure that it's paid accurately. So we're caught between a rock and a hard place.
And so based on the volume of claims you have, what can you imagine would become possible now if you were able to pay contractors the right price and significantly faster? So if you were able to kind of lessen down that cycle time and get things done faster, what do you think would become possible for you now and your team?
Uh, well, that's the goal. Um, I can dance around this any way I like, but I mean, when you're talking about time reduction, what sort of time reductions are you talking about here? Because if it's reducing it by 5 minutes, that's not a lot. We have to be talking weeks here, because these things can go on for months.
Yeah, and where you're coming from now is I'm really curious on what becomes possible if you then get that time reduction, because what we specifically can do is we're saving on average 1 to 2 hours per claim per adjuster. And so based on the volumes that you guys have, looks like you have about 600,000 claims you process per year. It's a hell of a lot of time. I think that's more than weeks. I think that we're getting into months. So now, are you going to be doing the end zone dance? Are you going to be celebrating if I can save you probably 2 to 3 months of time on an annual basis based on what you talked
Uh,
about?
um, well, no, I'll probably get somebody I'll deputize somebody to do my dancing for me, but we will certainly be doing some form of a dance in the end zone. Yeah. Well, you're telling me you can do that?
Not only can we do that, I think I can show you specifically how we do that. And I don't think we need to do that via demo. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to partner with you. Maybe we can sketch up what a current claim would look like. If we can map out the process for one current claim, I can show you where this technology fits in, and we can talk about whether or not it works for you. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll do
Okay.
that. Okay.
What's a good next step?
Uh, well, you get in touch with my PA, find out when I'm free, and either we can do it on Zoom or the next time you're in town, come around.
I'll make sure we do exactly that. Thank you, Ross. Thanks for your time.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
see,
Brian. Bye-bye now.
so the difference is in this call, I would hope that when you're watching it, you're watching a dynamic connection of, again, unscripted. So the pressure is all on me to basically sell to Ross because I have no idea what he's going to say. But what you'll notice is you're having a very different conversation because you're not now going to remember features and benefits of one click code, which is okay because you've now laid the groundwork and foundation for what becomes possible now. If this guy is telling me that he can save me months of time in claim processing, and he's proven that through this idea of identifying code data and being able to have the conversation, build and negotiate. Now you're forming rapport, but you're also taking in data points, and you're now selling something in the future. That is going to create a dialogue that is not going to lead to you getting ghosted. So Ross, what did you experience in that? I know we're coming up on time here, so we gotta
Okay.
go through this.
The key for me was 600,000 claims a year, 1 to 2 hours per claim. That is an astonishing amount of time. Therefore, that's an astonishing amount of money. So anything that you can do to reduce that is not going to be trivial. Would I do the end zone dance if I could do that? Damn right I would.
I think you would. And I think the conversation, so hopefully through the role play, what became evident is the outcome changes the conversation, because what you're trying to do is interesting people are interested, right? So I'm trying to be interested in what he's going through. Now, if I had more time, I'd be able to break down and get into the emotional state of maybe what's keeping him up at night, maybe what he's been let down from other companies, maybe why the materials were missing what they had. But back to that vacation voucher and holiday voucher. If you're talking to a travel agent and that travel agent is able to give you a vision of what is now going to happen when you land in Turks and Caicos and you have the white powdery sand and you got the Mai Tai at the bar and you're having great meals and great fun, you're not going to worry about the $3,000 that you have to spend to go and do that. The money's going to go out the window. Budgets are not going to smash through because you've now talked about and saying, well, listen, when was the last time you actually put your feet up and you had a relaxing night's sleep where you could dream? That's where we're getting into new territory. So I promised you 4 actions pragmatically that you can take in practical action, whether you use one of these or all 4 of them. They will start adding value moment to moment. First action, we talked about this phrase, and Ross has used this phrase, showing up. When we say showing up, you'll hear statistics around 80% of success is just simply showing up. This doesn't mean just attending the meeting and being on time. Those are table stakes. You have to do that. If you don't do that, you're not going to get a good outcome. When we say showing up, we're talking about showing up and sparkling. And the way that you sparkle is you show up for every occurrence, every meeting, every conversation, as if it's for that conversation. In a world where we move from office work to remote work, I think we've gotten to a point where individuals go from meeting to meeting to meeting. They don't even take a break to drink a glass of water, to go get a bite of food, to go for a walk. You have to clear your mind and you have to let go of the previous conversation. And in sales, it's incredibly hard to do that because you're having the same conversation seemingly. Do you want to buy my platform? It does this, this, and this. That's when you know you're having the wrong conversation, but also that's going to come through to the end user. So showing up, number one, depending on time, we can go through this a little bit more, but showing up is about how do we then refresh and treat every meeting, excuse me, like it's the first time you're attending. And this also goes for when you have one-on-ones with employees. If you're a manager or executive and you're sitting down with employees, you might have had a contentious conversation. Your next employee should not feel the contentious conversation from the prior meeting. You have to find a way to dust off, whether that's 3 deep breaths, whether that's a self-talk conversation, a quick walk, whether that's taking 2 minutes in between. Interrupt the pattern, show up, because it goes a long way. Second thing is painting a picture. We talk about painting a picture. I'll just go into this in detail. When we think about the outcome, you're trying your best to put yourself in the client's shoes. And when you're painting a picture, if you're not good with metaphors or your imagination is relatively small, you're not great on the fly, you're a deep thinker, all of that is okay. You can effectively find ways, you can build a mind map or a decision tree to go into a meeting and paint a picture that you believe is a good picture to paint. Walk someone through a metaphor. And if you're asking the right questions, if you're describing an experience of what someone will be doing, back to that holiday metaphor, you're going to get someone into an area that they possibly haven't lived in or went to. And now they're going to be able to imagine. So if you could tap into someone's imagination, just like Disney, right? The reason why people still go to those theme parks is because it's bringing you a place of imagination. Unbelievable. So next one, quantifying the win. This comes down to financial terms, emotional terms, reputation terms. I will get you 4 key placements, which will get you 1 key award, which will transform your business. I will be able to deliver 180 new leads in the next 6 months. These are quantifying the win. What happens now? So when someone's selling you a car and they go, hey, this SUV is $30,000. Do you want to buy it? You're like, well, no, I didn't want to. I want to pay $20,000 for the car that I want. That's my budget. Okay, well, this is how much it costs. You're not really going to get excited. But if you quantify the win and say, listen, for $30,000, you will never have to take a phone call using your handset inside the car. We have the best Bluetooth on the market. Amazing. That's one thing. But then if you push it even further, and you could talk about that $30,000 gets you a quantifiable return, you're now changing the definition of value. And that's back to what we talked about with 600,000 claims, 1 to 2 hours per claim. Now you're quantifying this and you're putting money on the table that you have to then deliver against. And the last bit is, and Ross, I'll give you a second to add color commentary on any of this stuff. But the last bit is seeking feedback. This, I think, is a secret weapon, which I rarely see. When I say seek feedback, I'm not talking about sending someone a survey. I'm not talking about sending someone a Google review to be like, hey, let us know what you thought. No, I'm talking about seeking feedback specifically in terms of why someone bought you. Why did someone connect? What do they think you sold them versus what you believe you sold them? And then how is the experience of buying? Because if you're creating an experience and you're delivering something to that individual, you want to make sure that you knew what you did, what was compelling, and what they heard in the conversation. Because a product market fit, the market determines the value of your product. You don't determine the value of your product. And so what I would counsel everybody to do is go back to your leads, good and bad. If they bought from you, find a chance to go back with them. Because most sales individuals say, hey, how's the experience going? Like, how do you like our product? That's not the feedback you want. You want the feedback of how do you make your offering more compelling. So we'll go back to this real quick. We're right at the end of time here. Ross, anything that you wanted to add, color commentary?
Yeah, just go back to showing up. Showing up is not the act of being physically present. I don't, people show up for me. I don't care about their hair or their shiny shoes. What I care about is their attitude. So showing up in my book is you are 100% available for that person. You're there with an attitude of service, and you're there to try to create value and amazing outcomes for these people. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to do that. You just have to make the decision to do it. Because one thing I can guarantee you is that showing up that you use for one client, you cannot migrate to your next client. Every showing up has to be unique. You can't recycle them. Every moment is unique. And so therefore, every moment, therefore, every sales call deserves its own special, once in a lifetime, one-off showing up. You will notice the difference, I promise you. The second thing on paint a picture is when you're painting a picture, it's like a little miniature story. You're taking them from the present and in the future. And in the future, what will that be like? What will you notice? What will be going on? What will have been different? What possibilities might have been revealed that you hadn't noticed before? How will you be feeling? What will it be like to be in charge of this? And now that you've achieved it, what happens next? All these things take people into a future that hasn't occurred yet, but you're getting them to think about that. And they will think about those things and associate them with you and your business. That's a very, very powerful place to be. That's not selling features and benefits. I love the idea about going back to people and asking them why they bought from you, Brian. It's a very powerful thing because, like I found out myself after many years, people were using my products in a way that I hadn't even imagined. I learned more about what my product was capable of and what my business was capable of from them than I did from my own business.
Let the market tell the story.
Brilliant.
I love it. So questions and answers. I know we're at that point where we promised 45 minutes. We're a few minutes over. If anybody had any questions that Ross can answer, I can answer. They could be anything, simple, complex. Ask us the hard-hitting questions. Fire those in. I think Zoom has an easy feature. You can go ahead and do that. If there are no questions, good news is we'll captivate this recording. We'll capture it. We'll share it out. If anybody wants the recording to re-reference, we'll also send some background information. So everything will be recorded and distributed. If you had to leave early, no biggie. For those of you that hung in tight for the full hour, deeply appreciate it. We'll give like one more minute for Q&A. And Ross, just know I appreciate you, buddy. You always make me think differently.
We have a good time, don't we, Brian?
Hey, we do. And I got to tell you, role playing unscripted live is quite difficult. So I give broadcasters definitely a ton of credit because they're on the fly. We have a question coming in here. Okay, so first question is, how do you maintain your energy in showing up? Phenomenal question. I think the idea is if you're carrying forward things from a previous meeting, that's what's going to impact your energy showing up. So the tricks that I have is if you're getting the right amount of sleep and you're doing the right things for your health, you should have a limitless supply of energy inside of your body. Now, let's say you didn't get a good night's sleep and it's difficult and you're fatigued. Usually when I find myself feeling depleted, it's because I'm ruminating over something that happened in the past. So I had a conversation this morning that bothered me, or I'm thinking about a piece of business that hasn't yet closed. Being able to take those 3 breaths and literally say to yourself and out loud, take those 3 breaths and say, all right, I'm ready to show up for this next meeting. I'm going to show up positive, thoughtful, and I'm going to be there to serve. If you can set that frame for the next meeting that you have, you'll be surprised at how much energy comes into reserves, because at the end of the day, we're all just beings of energy. That's what I believe anyway. Anything, Ross, to add to that?
Well, I'm a far more simple and less thoughtful person than you, Bry. What I try to do is I simply ask myself the question in my next call is, what experience would I like this person to have of being in a conversation with me? So when we finish the conversation, how do I want them to come away with it? Do I want them to see a miserable old git, or somebody who is enthusiastic, sparkling, interested in them, keen to help? And by asking that question, that seems to tap into my ability to refresh without a great deal of effort.
It also gives you the ability to ask them, hey, am I showing up? Are you feeling my enthusiasm? Because I'm enthusiastic here. Gives you a chance.
Hey, how sparkly am I?
Yeah, exactly. So Sabina said Ross is amazing. So Ross, you already got fans. You got people behind you,
Yeah,
which is
thank you
awesome.
very much.
And then question just came in. How do you cope with challenging buyers who show up negatively to sales calls? It's really interesting because I personally think that the majority of folks are showing up negatively to sales calls. I think people that are even evaluating products and services that they're actively going to search and they're setting up conversations, I think they're showing up negatively because the human condition is one to default to say no first, not yes. And so they might not be negative in the sense where they're a curmudgeon or they're being rude or inappropriate, but they could be negative in the sense where they don't really want to say yes. It's rare that I find people who are enthusiastically like, oh my God, look at your design. Look at this. This is amazing. And I think your question is good because this is what pushes the outcome to the greatest order. Because if someone shows up negatively and you don't feel that they want to be there, and they really don't want to be there, you can take a bold move and you can pause and you can smile charmingly. You can say, I get the sense that you really don't want to be here right now. Am I wrong about that? And that's a bold, bold move, but it's one that you can pull out of your quiver. If you feel like you've tried to have an outcome of the outcome question where you're going into the future, and this person is just like, I'm here to ruin your day, you can serve them up a small little mirror. And that mirror can be, hey, do you not want to be here? Because like, I definitely want to give you back some time in your day. If you have some things that are pressing, we can reschedule as well. That will change the tonality, because then what you'll often find is, no, 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 I'm here. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. And they'll lean in. And I think what I do to change that fundamentally is also ask the question of, hey, what would make this call amazing? Like, forget the products, forget the services, forget what we have. Like, what would make this call amazing? You in the mood to laugh? You in the mood to cry? You in the mood to celebrate? Want to talk about something interesting? And I think you can change the fluctuation of the call, because I personally think we're all human, and some people aren't aware that they're having a really rough day, and they're probably not introspective enough to know that, to Ross's word, they're being a git. Any thoughts on that, Ross, you want to add?
No, absolutely agree, Bry. Very often when you blindside somebody like that, it's not a tactic you should use all the time. Use it with discretion. You don't want to get a bad reputation. There'll be a tiny little bit of them that resents it. They'll resent being called out, but there'll be a real big part of them that is giving you kudos for noticing it and letting them bail if they really need to or really want to. And they'll probably will agree to reschedule because you've helped them out a little bit. But the follow-up is critical, and you're absolutely right, which is, if they go, no, let's keep the call going. Let's get okay, right. Well, before we go any further, either what you said, what would make this call amazing, or what do you want to get out of this conversation? Why did you agree to it in the first place? What would be a good result? And by that time, they'll have softened up a little bit, or they'll get really cross and just tell you to go and get lost. But either way, it doesn't happen very often.
Exactly. But when it does happen, be careful about selling to case studies or performance or features and benefits, because when you default to there, I think that's when someone's being difficult. They're going to become more difficult. So that's a good opportunity to shift into, some of the thoughts around kind of when we say, what are your biggest pain points? Like, that's a real conventional way of saying it. but I think you could find a lot of phraseology that's not pain points, but it's getting to that. Things like, what's keeping you up at night? Hey, what's the last thing that made your week really difficult? Just thinking of different phrases to get to a point, and then shifting to the other side of it, where if somebody is ultimately being negative as well, you could hit them with the positive recourse to say something to the tune of like, hey, when was the last time you got an email where you were like, damn, that's impactful? And just get them thinking and fresh thinking into a place, because people will tell you, I think, what they're thinking. I think it's a good way of validating assumptions. All right, next question, Sabina, thank you for the follow-up. Do you believe in cold calls? Cold calls are a really, really sticky situation, because I think it depends on the product, the service, the value. I think it depends on how you're getting that person's information. Cold calls can work really, really well if you're looking to influence individuals to potentially vote. Cold calls can work really well if you're a local restaurant and you want individuals to try something and you can find a way to describe a meal. Cold calls work really well. We mentioned roofing companies. They work really well. There's things called door knockers, right? Where door knockers will be hired to, if you're doing roofs after a storm in a neighborhood, a door knocker will just hit door to door, have a conversation, talk about a deal, a discount, et cetera. And that's a cold outreach. I think if cold outreaches are done in a way where they recognize how invasive and intrusive it is, and I think if the cold outreach is done in a way where you can talk to someone and recognize like, hey, listen, I know I'm right in the middle of your day here, and probably the last person you want to hear from. However, what if? And you could help them imagine something very quickly, and just know that you're hitting them. It's almost like poking a bear. You're going to get the claws. If you know you're going to get the claws, and you could hang in the pocket metaphorically and find a way to form a common ground, there's a chance for cold calls to work. I don't believe cold calls are really good for technology brands. I don't think they're good for service-based businesses, but there is a place for them. What do you think, Ross?
Oh, no, not for me. Not I- there's always a way of warming up a frigid prospect. And I would rather invest in a little bit of time and a little bit of effort before I made the call to at least take the frosty edge off it so I have a chance of connecting. But opening up the fridge and trying to have a conversation with an ice cube is kind of a hard thing to do. And I don't get a lot of pleasure out of it. My life is too short to spend my days doing that now.
Completely understandable. And so when it comes down, you would say warming up that lead, follow them on LinkedIn, engage in their content, learn where they might be attending a conference. So find a way to create an introduction versus just hammering the phones. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Send them a personalized note with their name and address on it. Handwrite it. Sign it with your name. Say, I noticed this about your business. This I found that really fascinating. I'd like to know more. Turn it into a human engagement.
Wonderful. All right, Q&A. We're almost at the top of the hour. Again, thank you for the fierce and faithful people who have been here the whole time. Ross McKenzie, thank you for your time, your energy.
Thank you, Brian.
Your expertise. You are a force. You're very impressive, and I really appreciate everything. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who listened. Again, we will capture this, send it out. Thank you for the Q&A. Appreciate everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks very much, Brian. Thank you. Bye-bye.